The last day of school had always been a time of relief and celebration. But this year, the air felt different, thick with an unspoken tension. It was my junior year, and as I walked through the halls, the usual noise of chatter and laughter seemed muted, almost as if the school itself knew what was coming. I reached my locker, fumbling with the combination lock, eager to dump my books and head to the end-of-year assembly. That's when I noticed him, Dylan Carter. He was a senior, someone who had always kept to himself. I remembered seeing him get picked on countless times over the years. The bullies never tired of finding new ways to torment him. His eyes were always dark, haunted by an inner turmoil that no one seemed to care about. Today, though, something was different. He moved through the hall with a purpose, his expression vacant but determined. I felt a shiver run down my spine as he brushed past me. There was something unsettling about the way he walked, like he was carrying an invisible weight. The bell rang, signaling the start of the assembly. I joined the stream of students heading towards the gymnasium, but my mind kept drifting back to Dylan. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. As the principal began his speech, I noticed Dylan slip in through the back doors. He wasn't supposed to be here. Seniors had already had their graduation ceremony. My unease grew into a knot of fear in my stomach. I glanced around hoping someone else noticed, but everyone was too engrossed in their own conversations. Suddenly, Dylan stood up. The room fell silent as he walked towards the stage. The principal paused, a look of confusion crossing his face. "Dylan, can I help you with something?" he asked, his voice strained with forced politeness. Dylan didn't respond. Instead, he reached into his backpack and pulled out a gun. Gasps echoed through the gymnasium as he raised it, aiming directly at the principal. My heart pounded in my chest, every beat a painful reminder that this was real, that we were in danger. "I've had enough," Dylan said, his voice steady but filled with a chilling calmness. Years of suffering, of being ignored and ridiculed. Today, I make them see. Panic erupted. Students screamed, scrambling over each other in a desperate bid to escape. I was frozen, unable to move, my eyes locked on Dylan. He fired a shot into the air, the deafening crack reverberating through the gym. "No one leaves!" he shouted, his voice breaking with a mix of rage and despair. He started walking towards the center of the room, his gaze scanning the terrified faces around him. I ducked behind a row of bleachers, my breath coming in shallow, ragged gasps. I needed to think, to find a way out of this nightmare. As I crouched there, I heard him call out names of the bullies who had tormented him. One by one, they were forced to stand, their faces pale with fear. I couldn't see what was happening, but I heard the confrontations, the accusations, and then the sickening sound of gunshots. I felt a tear slide down my cheek. This wasn't how things were supposed to end. My mind raced, searching for a solution. I spotted my phone in my backpack. With trembling hands, I dialed 911, whispering into the receiver about the situation. The operator assured me that help was on the way, but I knew it would take time we didn't have. Just then, I heard footsteps approaching. I held my breath, praying he wouldn't find me. Dylan's voice was closer now, filled with a mix of anger and sorrow. "Why did they do this to me?" he yelled. "Why didn't anyone care?" I heard a thud, and then silence. I peeked out from my hiding spot to see him kneeling on the floor, the gun lying beside him. His shoulders shook with sobs, the weight of his actions crashing down on him. It was a moment of vulnerability, a brief window where he was just a broken boy instead of a monster. The doors burst open, and police officers swarmed in. They moved quickly, securing Dylan and ensuring everyone's safety. I watched as they led him away, his eyes glazed over, lost in his own world of pain and regret. In the aftermath, the school was eerily quiet. The air was heavy with the scent of fear and blood. I couldn't shake the image of Dylan's face, the agony in his eyes as he tried to make sense of the years of torment he had endured. The last day of school had turned into a nightmare, a reminder of how deeply words and actions can wound, and the devastating lengths someone might go to when they feel like they have nothing left to lose. As I walked out of the gym, the sun was setting, casting long shadows over the building. I knew that things would never be the same. The scars of that day would linger, a haunting reminder of the fragility of life and the darkness that can reside within the human heart. The last day of school was supposed to be a celebration, a final farewell to the routines and classrooms before the sweet release of summer. But as I walked out of the school gates that afternoon, it marked the beginning of a nightmare that would haunt me forever. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows on the asphalt as my friends and I laughed and chatted about our summer plans. The air was thick with the scent of blooming flowers and freshly cut grass. We were blissfully unaware of the danger lurking nearby. As we rounded the corner onto a quieter street, a dark sedan slowly approached us. The windows were tinted, making it impossible to see who was inside. It matched our pace for a moment before the passenger window rolled down. A middle-aged man with a greasy comb-over and a sickly smile leaned out. "Hey kids," he called out, his voice oily and unctuous. "Need a ride? It's hot out and I'm heading your way." We exchanged uneasy glances. There was something off about his demeanor, something predatory. "No thanks," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "We're fine," he persisted, his smile widening unnaturally. "Come on, it's no trouble. I can take you wherever you need to go." A chill ran down my spine. I nudged my friends and we quickened our pace, but the car followed, creeping alongside us. The man's insistence grew more aggressive. "Get in the car, now," he commanded, the friendly facade slipping to reveal a darker, more sinister tone. "I'm not asking again." Panic set in. We broke into a run, darting between houses and down narrow alleys, the sound of our pounding footsteps echoing off the walls. The car revved its engine and sped up, keeping pace with us. My heart hammered in my chest, the fear coursing through my veins like ice. "Split up," I shouted, hoping to confuse him. My friends scattered in different directions and I veered off towards a series of backyards. I could hear the car skidding to a halt, the man's furious shouts filling the air. I hurtled over fences, ducked under clotheslines, and sprinted through gardens, desperate to put as much distance between myself and the car as possible. But the sound of the engine was relentless, a mechanical growl that seemed to be right on my heels. I turned a corner and found myself in a dead end, a high fence blocking my path. Desperation clawed at my throat. I turned around, ready to backtrack, when I saw the car screech to a stop at the entrance of the alley. The man got out, slamming the door behind him. His eyes were wild, and he held something shiny in his hand, a knife. He started towards me, a twisted grin on his face. Just as I thought all hope was lost, a voice rang out, strong and authoritative. "Hey, what's going on here?" A police officer emerged from a nearby yard, his hand resting on the holster of his gun. The man froze, his face contorting with rage and frustration. He glanced between me and the officer, calculating his next move. "You okay, kid?" the officer asked, his eyes narrowing as he took in the scene. I nodded, too terrified to speak. The man took a step back, then another, before turning and bolting towards his car. The officer shouted after him, but he was already in the car, peeling away with a screech of tires. The sound of the engine faded into the distance, leaving an eerie silence in its wake. The officer approached me, his expression softening. "Are you hurt?" I shook my head, finally finding my voice. "No, but he tried to get us into his car. He wouldn't stop following us." The officer's jaw tightened. "We'll get him, but for now, let's get you somewhere safe." He led me back to his patrol car, where I found my friends huddled together, looking just as shaken as I felt. We gave our statements, describing the man and his car in as much detail as we could remember. The officer assured us that they would do everything they could to catch him. As we sat in the back of the patrol car, waiting for our parents to arrive, I couldn't help but think about how close we had come to something truly horrific. The last day of school was supposed to be the start of a carefree summer, but it had turned into a chilling reminder of how quickly things could go wrong. Even now, the memory of that day lingers in the back of my mind, a constant reminder to always be aware of my surroundings. The man was never caught, and sometimes I still see his face in my nightmares, that twisted grin and those cold, calculating eyes. The terror of that last day of school remains with me, a shadow that darkens even the brightest summer days. The final bell of the school year rang out, a sound usually associated with freedom and summer adventures. This time, however, it carried an ominous weight that made my heart pound harder in my chest. The last day of school was supposed to be a celebration, a release from the academic grind. Instead, it was the start of a nightmare I would never forget. As I gathered my things, excited murmurs and laughter filled the hallway. I should have been part of that joyful noise, but a gnawing sense of unease kept me on edge. It had been a strange day with an unusual tension in the air, but I couldn't quite put my finger on what was wrong. That was until I felt a cold, hard object press into my back. "Don't make a sound," a voice hissed in my ear. I froze. The voice belonged to Jason, a classmate who had always been quiet, almost invisible. I turned my head slightly and saw the glint of a knife. Panic surged through me, but I forced myself to stay calm. "Walk," he commanded. With the knife hidden from view but still pressed against me, we moved down the hallway. My mind raced, trying to understand why this was happening. Jason had always been a bit of a loner, but he never seemed dangerous. We stopped in front of the music room. It was empty, the instruments neatly packed away for the summer. Jason pushed me inside and locked the door behind us. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice trembling. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he paced back and forth, his grip on the knife tightening and loosening in a rhythmic, terrifying pattern. Finally, he spoke, his voice filled with a mix of anger and desperation. "I've liked Brooke for years," he said, referring to my girlfriend. "And now you're going to break up with her." My heart sank. This was about Brooke. I knew Jason had been harboring a crush on her, but I never imagined it would come to this. He was unhinged, and I needed to find a way out before things got worse. I'll do it," I stammered, trying to buy myself some time. "Just put the knife down." He stopped pacing and looked at me, his eyes wild. "Do you think I'm stupid? You'll say anything to get out of here. I need to hear you say it right now." I swallowed hard, forcing myself to think clearly. "Okay, I'll break up with her, I promise." Jason's face twisted into a grim smile. "Good. Now, call her and do it." My hands shook as I pulled out my phone. I dialed Brooke's number, hoping she wouldn't pick up. The call went to voicemail, and I let out a silent breath of relief. "It's me," I said into the phone, trying to sound convincing. "We need to talk. I think we should break up." Jason's eyes bored into me, watching my every move. I hung up and put the phone down, praying he would believe me. "There, I did it," I said. "Now let me go." For a moment, he seemed to hesitate. Then slowly, he lowered the knife. "If I find out you lied?" "I won't," I interrupted quickly. "I won't lie." He stepped back, allowing me to move toward the door. My heart raced as I reached for the handle, half expecting him to attack again. But he didn't. I unlocked the door and walked out, my legs weak with relief. I didn't stop walking until I was outside the school. My hands were still shaking, but I knew I had to get to the police. I flagged down a cab and headed straight to the station, replaying the events in my mind. How had things escalated so quickly? At the police station, I told them everything. They took my statement seriously and assured me they would handle it. As I left, a weight lifted off my shoulders, but a lingering fear remained. Would Jason come after me again? Or worse, would he go after Brooke? I called Brooke as soon as I got home, explaining everything in a rush. She was shocked, but grateful I was safe. We agreed to be more cautious and avoid Jason at all costs. Days turned into weeks, and summer began to unfold as it should have, filled with lazy afternoons and fun with friends. Jason never appeared again. The police said he had left town, but they didn't know where he went. The thought of him lurking somewhere out there was terrifying, but I tried to push it to the back of my mind. The last day of school had turned into a horror story I couldn't escape from, a reminder of how quickly life could change. I was grateful to be alive, but the fear of that day would stay with me forever. It was the last day of school, and the air buzzed with a mixture of excitement and relief. My friends and I had been counting down the days until summer break, and now that it was finally here, all we could talk about was the bowling party we had planned for the evening. As the final bell rang, I rushed to my locker to grab my things, eager to leave the school grounds and start celebrating. "Hey, wait up!" my friend Maggie called out, waving as she approached. "We're all meeting at the bowling alley at 6, right?" "Yep, I'll see you guys there," I replied, grinning. Just as I was about to head out the front doors, I heard a voice call my name. I turned to see Mr. Schneider, my math teacher, standing at the end of the hallway. He was an older man with a stern demeanor, and though he was known for being a tough grader, I had never had any personal issues with him. "Could I speak with you for a moment?" he asked, his tone unusually gentle. "Sure, Mr. Schneider," I said, checking my watch. "But I have to be quick. I'm meeting my friends soon." "It won't take long," he assured me. "Just step into my classroom for a minute." I followed him down the empty hallway to his classroom, wondering what he could possibly want to talk about on the last day of school. As I entered the room, I noticed it was dimly lit, with only a few of the overhead lights on. Mr. Schneider closed the door behind us, and the click of the lock sent a shiver down my spine. "I just wanted to congratulate you on your hard work this year," he began, his voice strangely soft. You've been an exemplary student, and I've been very impressed with your dedication. Thank you, Mr. Schneider, I replied, feeling a bit uncomfortable with the excessive praise. I really appreciate it. I think you deserve a reward, he continued, his eyes narrowing slightly. I have something special for you. He walked over to his desk and pulled out a small glass bottle filled with a clear liquid. The label was faded and unreadable, but the liquid inside seemed to sparkle under the fluorescent lights. This is a rare drink, he said, holding it out to me. It's not something you can find just anywhere. I think you'll really enjoy it. I took a step back, alarm bells ringing in my head. Thanks, but I'm meeting my friends for bowling. I really need to go. His expression darkened and his grip on the bottle tightened. Nonsense. This will only take a moment. You can't leave without trying it. I'm really not interested, I insisted, trying to keep my voice steady. I should go. Mr. Schneider's face twisted with anger and he took a step closer. You don't understand. You have to drink it. It's important. Panic surged through me as I realized something was very wrong. My eyes darted around the room, searching for an escape. I inched toward the door, hoping to slip out before things escalated further. You're not going anywhere until you drink this, he growled, his voice now a low, menacing rumble. Summoning all my courage, I turned and bolted for the door. I heard him shout behind me, but I didn't look back. My heart pounded in my chest as I fumbled with the lock, finally wrenching the door open and sprinting down the hallway. I could hear Mr. Schneider's footsteps echoing behind me, but I didn't dare slow down. I burst through the front doors of the school and ran across the parking lot, not stopping until I reached the main road. Only then did I glance back to see if he was still following me. To my relief, the parking lot was empty. I doubled over, gasping for breath, my mind racing with the implications of what had just happened. There was no doubt in my mind that Mr. Schneider had intended to harm me, and the thought made my skin crawl. I quickly pulled out my phone and called Maggie, my hands trembling as I dialed her number. She answered on the first ring. Hey, where are you? She asked, her voice full of excitement. I'm on my way, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I'll explain everything when I get there. As I made my way to the bowling alley, I couldn't shake the feeling of dread that had settled over me. The image of Mr. Schneider's twisted expression and the bottle of unknown liquid haunted my thoughts. I knew I had to report what had happened, but for now, all I wanted was to be surrounded by my friends and feel safe. That night, as I sat in the brightly lit bowling alley, laughing with my friends and trying to enjoy the beginning of our summer break, I couldn't help but glance over my shoulder every now and then, half expecting to see Mr. Schneider lurking in the shadows. The encounter had left a scar that would take a long time to heal, and I knew that I would never forget the terror of that last day of school.